I think we're going to now hear from Hervé Chneiweiss and leave the questions for both of you at the end, because you both are speaking about the ethical issues of CRISPR-Cas9. So let me introduce to those of you who don't know Hervé Chneiweiss. He is a neurologist and a neuroscientist, research director at the CNRS studying molecular mechanisms involved in glial plasticity. I love to say that word. I don't know why, glial plasticity. He currently is the head of the research center, Neurosciences Paris Seine. I'm not going to mention all of the various and diverse and intense things that he does. He was the advisor for the life sciences and bioethics to the French Minister for Research and Technology at the time, the Minister Schwarzenberg. He is presently the head of the INSERM Ethics Committee. He was member of the National Advisory Ethics Committee, the CCNE, as of recently, and he is a member of the International Committee of Bioethics at UNESCO. And he is also the chief editor of Médecine Sciences. Cher Hervé.
Thank you. This was some of my links of interest that might become conflicts at certain time. I'm going to escape a few slides, but just in complement to what Eva already said, we had already a number of meetings, and I should say that all the story started in only in 2015. Not as the science, but as the public debate, and it came very rapidly. It came clearly from the intervention on human embryos and the questioning that raised from that. And this raised all these reports and our meeting. I should like also to say that before this meeting, we did a lot of other meetings, just to mention the one where the European group was involved in addition to publishing this position paper. I'd like also to emphasize the fact that we are speaking of genome editing with cutting or without cutting, but this should not be possible with the other techniques, with the convergence of bioinformatics, with the convergence of the ability to cultivate embryos now for at least 2 weeks. So it's when we are dealing with these questions of genome editing, we are dealing also with more generally interventions on our body or on our cells at various levels, and this could go until the big data questions. So this raised clearly different ethical questions, and because we have different ethical questions when it comes to human applications, to animal applications, to plants, when it comes to medical versus some other commercial, where we have to distinguish research from applications, it will come to basic questioning, such as the question of heritability, the new aspect of the precautionary principle that must be a principle of action, not a principle of inaction, and that will target various aspects going from human to environment. So we have already seen the technical problems. We have already mentioned the fact that we have some proposals that are already existing, and thanks to the site that Luis designed, now you have a series of selected papers that have already been placed on the site. Maybe the only thing that we didn't spoke about till now is the do-it-yourself movement, and maybe the dual use of some of the application of the technology. So we also have to investigate all what is happening with the do-it-yourself movement. And I should say that now the question is, what are we going to do? And the first thing that we thought about when we thought of the European Steering Committee, that should become now an international steering committee, is to evaluate all what we learned this morning from Francis' presentations. Because we know we have off-target, but our genome coding for the exome is only 2% of our genome. So we could have off-target, but maybe with no meaning. In each generation, from our father and mother, we inherited more or less 60 mutations. So each generation have 60 new mutations. Most of them are not significant, at least they are not significant as raising a disease. What could be acceptable as mosaicism? What are the impact at the epigenetic level? So clearly we need to have an expert committee, and this expert committee should be open and transparent and mix all the stakeholders, because it's not only about science, but also about the effect of science and the impact on the economic sector too. Eva already mentioned the question of Oviedo, and I think that some aspect of Oviedo should be discussed. At least Oviedo Article 13 don't prevent research. Article 13 is open to research. The question is, once again, heritability. And until the technique is not safe enough, we can have discussions, but it will remain research. And ARRIGE should place clearly the question, the difference between research and translation toward applications. We already discussed gene drive, and this is an important matter. We already mentioned in our position paper a lot of questions to target and to answer. So we need another committee. I'd like to mention this initiative that has been taken by research institutions gathered in this organization named HEROES, Head of Institution of Research. They are calling themselves like that. But taken into consideration a report from the National Academy on gene drive, this led to a position paper that was published in Science last November. And I will take just this because I think it's important for us. Ethic of responsibility, sponsor, but it will be anyone, aim to contribute to an adaptive and data-informed toolbox of policies that can support the responsible development of, and this will be of any application, in this case a gene drive, but I think that what said this article, including moral compass to anchor the actionable, including the best practice guidance, including the standard set, including the involvement and the engagement of the public, most of the principles that are in this paper for gene drive could be applicable for any aspect. We need to take into consideration what Mylène just said about the fact that we have activists in one side or another, and we need to make the science and the technology not hijacked by these extreme views. We need also to raise the philosophical question because life is dynamic. Life is also open. We have listened from Francis once again that to some extent we had a Lamarckian evolution for more than 400 millions of years and we have to move to a more adaptation Darwinism, but I will remember you that in the introduction of his book, Darwin mentioned Lamarck as the first to have paved the road to evolution theories. So clearly, on our website and on the mailing list, a certain number of questions were already open. The question of ARRIGE identity. What do we offer that has not already been done? What do we promote? What could be a coherent approach, a consensus, or are we going to value our diversity, multiplicity? How to mobilize national, linguistic, religious, geographical diversity? How to manage with this multidisciplinarity? And how to work together in a meaningful way? So clearly, for the last 2 or 3 months, these were the questions that I saw on our list coming and coming again. All of these need to be inclusive and made together. So a big beginning of proposal, and this is open to discussion, but our hope, at least from the steering committee, at least from the present board, our hope is that we will leave tonight with a roadmap. We will leave tonight with people that are taking in charge working groups. We will leave tonight with a series of active working groups that will use the new domain that Luis will describe to actively work and prepare future meetings. So we need to be a reliable platform. This is what we began by collecting a certain number of papers that we consider as reference papers and links with this reference to give selected and valuable readings. We will continue to try to be this reliable platform. We need to be a permanent forum. Because, as already mentioned, we had a lot of meetings, some reports, but what after the report? Who is in charge of evaluating the impact of the report? How are we going from words to actions? This will be this permanent forum. We need to produce ethical toolbox because most likely laws are too slow, too diverse as country, but norms are more interesting, and ethical toolbox and guidelines are more prone to go to the practice more rapidly. We need to discuss and be involved in the governance of GE technology, but looking to the agencies represented here, we have listened to David on OECD, we have Agnes with EMEA, we have other agencies and government represented here. It seems that ARRIGE could be involved in governance. And finally, we have started just with a previous discussion how to engage the lay public, and this will be particularly important when we will discuss about changing their environment, for example, in the case of gene drive or other alternative to fight against vector-borne disease. So it's fundamental to anticipate all this. So what are we going to be? Are we going to be a professional society? Most likely not, because of our diversity. Are we going to be an official body embedded in an international organization, as it is for the climate change, for example? Why not? We will have an official of UNESCO later on this afternoon. Maybe UNESCO or another UN body could take such an initiative. Are we going to be a specific international association? Most likely this is the most simple way, but we have to decide that today, and this will be the matter of our discussion now. At least, thanks to Luis, we have a domain, ARRIGE.org. At least you can make promotion of ARRIGE by this mailing address. And now the floor is yours, and the activity is what you want to do to create ARRIGE. Thank you very much.